Hi, welcome to Yachting International Radio. We are once again at the PINMAR Golf. It is the end of an era. 31 years this has been going on.
Certainly is. I can't believe it.
I'd like to welcome Anthony Just. He is one of many that have been here for many, many years. Tell me a bit about the first time that you ever participated in the PINMAR Golf.
Well, I sailed in here as a super yacht captain in the 90s for the first time, and I think my first PINMAR would have been 97. Friends and colleagues who lived here brought me into this, and I've played every PINMAR since. So that's 22 years. The first few were just as a participant and joining other captains, normally yacht teams. Actually, all of them would have been yacht teams at that point. And then I retired from being a yacht captain at the end of 2000, the millennium. Played the PINMAR that year, of course. And the following year, I started a marine charter and leisure company with all of my old clients and contacts in a networking capacity. And I first sponsored as Just World Leisure in 2005. So up until then, I'd been playing, taking a look at this wonderful networking platform, dealing with colleagues and clients. And as the yacht, as the actual yacht teams continued to increase, so did the service companies that were coming and joining PINMAR and supporting. So in 2005, I was approached by the organizers and asked if we wanted to sponsor. Which I think the first one was a breakfast that we did. So we're doing the breakfast this year for the very final one, and in fact the very first one we did in Son-en-Thème at that golf course was also sponsoring the breakfast. But it was quite an interesting event, that one, because we'd founded the company Omni Access, an IT internet company for yachts, 2 years prior in 2003. And so I brought Just World Leisure in and Omni Access on the same bill. And we actually streamed by internet out in the forest in Son-en-Thème, I think it was the World Cup rugby, so that the players could stand at the bar and watch the World Cup rugby. And that was an Omni Access.
Well, isn't the World Cup rugby happening this weekend as well?
It's happening now as well.
Yeah.
So same sort of thing. So that was quite cool, being able to bring new technology into the PINMAR as a novelty.
Yeah.
And Omni Access has continued to support PINMAR over the years. And the Omni Access team were playing yesterday, and Just World Leisure have continued as well as two separate entities now. But we're all still associated. So it's since 2005. In 2009, I had one of my yachting clients, who was a yacht owner, and I was consulting him and assisting him. He was the inventor of prosthetic limbs, a very fast and wonderful method of putting prosthetic limbs on amputees in 1 hour. And I was working with him, and he asked me to assist in Africa. Being a South African and knowing the African markets. So I brought OK Prosthetics to the PINMAR, and instead of exhibiting ourselves as Just World Leisure, we brought the OK Prosthetics focus in, which was completely in line, obviously, with all of the PINMAR charities focus, the wonderful group of charities that they were already supporting for many years. And so OK Prosthetics was brought in, and our stands were we were on the bar then. We were supporting, not breakfast, sponsoring the bar. And so on the bar would have been the focus of all of the photographs and things to depict what we were doing in Africa and in Haiti when the earthquake happened in 2010. So that was wonderful to do that, and PINMAR had been a great supporter, likewise, of the projects that we've been doing over the years. with the prosthetics.
Well, in the prosthetics, I mean, I went onto the website and it is worldwide.
Yep.
Completely world. And I was speaking to somebody else as well. I mean, the great thing about these prosthetics is that it literally, generally speaking, when you talk about people that have been in war-torn countries or people that have fought in wars that need prosthetics, it's a long, drawn-out process, and there's a necessity to go to the hospital. There's numerous refits, and the people that you are able to help, they don't have access to that. So what is special about these prosthetics that makes it easier for people in, sort of small villages in the middle of Africa to be able to get the access that they need, or in other war-torn countries, Syria, for example, where they need prosthetics, but they don't have access to the kind of, amazing medical care that we may have, for example, in England or the United States or Canada or Spain, for that matter.
Prosthetics, or the fitting of a prosthetic limb, is a very, as you say, long and drawn-out process,
Yeah.
and it's quite archaic for a number of reasons. One is that new technology has been very slow in being introduced because clinics out in the bush, in the outback, in third world countries, are geared up for a very manual process of using plaster of Paris and huge amount of time to fashion first a mold and then a limb and then fit the limb and then have to refashion it because it doesn't fit, and then finding also that it's unadaptable. The patient's weight may change, the limb becomes unusable, and the whole process has to start over again. Because it takes so long and is so costly, many people just don't have access to a limb. So the invention that Otto Christensen came up with was a pressurized molding on the limb, which takes 1 hour to do. So with the making of the socket and the assembly of the foot and the tube and all the other things that need to be done, takes 1 hour. And the amputee is then immediately comfortable in that limb and is able to walk away and possibly come back the next day for a bit of tuning. We can tune the angle, we can look at the gait of the amputee and give them some fine tuning. So if we're in an area for 2 or 3 days, we can fit up to, I think my record was 25 in 1 day. We worked for about 18 hours because they kept coming. They were seeing the result of a family member coming back and actually walking and having a normal life immediately. So the Bush Telegraph would work, and they'd be there the next day, and we did 25 in 1 day. Normally we would try for about 10 or 12 a day, which would give us more time to actually teach them how to walk rather than just manufacturing and getting them up and on their feet. So ideally 10 to 12 a day with a team of 3 or 4 people is quite doable. It's also obviously cost effective. The limb, all the components of the limb are costing roughly $750. So we can load up duffel bags with all of the modularized kit form components and head off in a dinghy up a river somewhere, and we don't need electricity or anything like that. The only electrical thing is a battery operated jigsaw,
Right.
and everything else can be done by hand. So we don't need kilns or heating ovens to cure
Right.
the limb. It all gets done in situ with a pressurized bladder.
Wow.
So quite remarkable. The inventor is a remarkable man, and his methods have been adopted now and are being used in many different places. Every now and again we have to push, because occasionally the existing health departments and clinics tend to possibly run out of materials, and then they go back to the old archaic system where they're fitting maybe 1 leg a day,
Right.
or 1 leg every 2 or 3 days, depending on how much grinding and sanding and plaster of Paris they have available. Normally a single amputee would be going back 3 or 4 times for a fitting, and that would be over a period of about 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So it would be 1 month for one leg for one amputee, and even then it wouldn't necessarily be the perfect one, but they'd get so grumpy with having to spend all their money on taxi fare getting to the clinic that eventually they'd say, give me my leg, I just want to get out of here.
Yeah.
And then they would live with an uncomfortable limb.
Well, and that can cause issues as well, can it not?
Oh yeah, that causes damage to the residual limb.
Exactly.
So what we give them, and also the other thing with traditional limbs is that once they are fashioned into a wearable form, you have the stump, the residual limb, often very loose inside there. And so the constant impact that's created causes blisters, deformation, pain. It causes them to have a strange gait because they're compensating all the time. So the miracle of this OK system is that the limb is completely trapped by the socket, and it has a soft silicon liner that goes inside. So there's no movement at all. It's basically an extension of your residual limb. And the only things that are critical to do are to make sure that the limb is tuned correctly to the gait. Mm-hmm. And there are a whole lot of adjustment screws that can be adjusted so that you can shift the angle of the person's foot. Because you must remember also they've probably been walking on crutches or an old wooden limb.
But this is also arms as well, isn't it?
We don't do arms.
You don't do arms. Okay.
Arms are much more complicated in the sense that it's all very well to give someone a socket on their stump and a hook, or two fingers, but to give them an articulated usage of that arm.
Yeah.
Out in the bush, it can help if you actually give them a hook.
Right.
Because a hook can be used to pick up a bucket or to drag things around. But unless you're actually going to give them articulated fingers, which is extremely costly, probably $10,000, $20,000, $25,000 just for the hand.
Right.
And then you have to have somebody there who's able to maintain. So we never went the direction of hands and fingers and arms. We basically give people mobility, we change their lives, and we change the lives of all of those around them who have been supporting them. So
I can imagine it makes a big difference because the time that it would take that somebody doesn't have a limb and can't be mobile, can't walk, can't go, especially in the bush. I mean, you can't just sit in a wheelchair like, in a city or in any normal place. You're not sitting in a wheelchair and being able to wheel yourself around. I mean, we're talking rough territory. Yeah. So you need help every step of every way.
Just to go to the toilet, you need help.
Yeah.
So normally what will happen in the communities in the bush is that one or two or more of the children will be given the responsibility to look after the amputee.
Right.
So you're taking a child out of school because they have to help grandma or uncle get to the toilet, go and fetch water, prepare lunch.
Yeah.
So by giving that person the ability to be mobile and get on with their own life, you're freeing up other people in the community. And also there's a huge amount of dignity application as well. Because once that person is able to go to the toilet by themselves or to go and fetch water at the river, their whole demeanor changes. In fact, they start dancing normally within minutes of receiving their leg, and they go rushing off.
I guess they kind of feel like a burden as well, because if there's a child that is giving up an education in order to further them, education is almost the doorway to a better life anywhere in the world. So if they see a child, especially a family member, giving up that doorway to a better world as a result of their amputation, I mean, it's not only that they're not mobile, but on top of that, they've got the guilt associated with holding back a member of their family.
Very much so.
So
it's a huge dignity issue.
Yeah.
For that and for many other reasons as well. They may have been a sports person beforehand, and now suddenly they aren't. So we often have, next thing they arrive, they've got a football with them and they're running around kicking the football. Or they were a great dancer beforehand. Suddenly they're dancing their traditional France. So
How do you find most of these people lose their limbs? Is it through war? Is it through landmines? Is it through accidents, just, animal accidents?
Well, there are a number. The countries we've been working in, Angola, Namibia, and many of the other African countries, it's through civil war and the constant planting of landmines. So many of the people are not even military, they're not soldiers. They are the people who are going to fetch water.
Yeah.
And what the opposing militia do is in order to facilitate their own retreat from any engagement, they plant mines in the places where they know the enemy are going to come for them, which gives them time to escape.
Yeah.
That's normally crossing a river at an intersection in the crossroads or on a jungle path. So when the kids are being sent or the women are being sent for water, they will run into landmines. Then there are other aspects as well. Snake bites are another big thing. Anything that gets infected in the extremities and doesn't get treated immediately will eventually go rotten. And the moment it goes rotten, you get gangrene, infection, and then progressively the amputations will start. And normally the doctors out there think, well, they'll get one chance at this patient, this amputee, so they'll just do the job as best they can. So they'll either chop them off really high, knowing full well that they would probably have to do 2 or 3 progressive amputations.
Yeah.
So they'll just sever the limb very high, or they'll do a really bad job and try and save the leg. And for instance, if it's an infected toe, we find that they'll amputate right on the ankle, which means that we then have nowhere to move. We can't fit a socket and fit a foot because they've gone and cut so low that there's no space to fit anything in there.
Yeah.
And we, in that case, have to say, please go back to the clinic, ask the surgeon to please amputate you about that much higher. So the trauma of the whole process is caused by them trying to save the limb. Other times, they amputate so high that they give us no residual stump on a transfemoral amputation. They give us a stump that size to fit something that's going to be able to contain, the socket will be able to contain, to give you some stability and rigidity. So one of the things that we need to do is go and talk to the surgeons and explain to them what we need from them. Cutting in the right place, being sensible about the fitting that we're going to have to do.
So, it's things like this we take for granted. I mean, just the simple fact that we are able to have antibiotics, something like a bug bite that if it got infected, we would just go to the doctor, take a couple of pills and you're fine. Mm-hmm. Something like that is literally possibly the loss of a limb in a country where they don't have access to simple things like antibiotics.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really sad, and it's quite enlightening as well that we take so many things for granted, and these people that they don't have something so simple.
And we also take for granted that orthopedic surgeons know what they're doing.
Right.
And often they are the cause of the major trauma.
But are these registered orthopedic surgeons, or are sometimes they people that are just sort of charged with that because they do have some medical knowledge in that area?
Every country would have a Ministry of Health, and then they would have an orthopedic department, and that would be managed from some central capital, and then there would be clinics. And so who gets sent out to those clinics depends on how far away. It's usually a matter of distance as well. So if you're in a really isolated area, out in the jungle, you might find that the orthopedic surgeon can't get to you. So they have to paddle in a canoe to get to the nearest town, which might have an orthopedic surgeon that hasn't been on any courses or hasn't read any manuals for years.
Okay.
And he just does what he knows best.
Right.
Or they go to the capital city and they go to the main hospital, and then they sit 2 or 3 weeks waiting for an appointment, And by that time, their situation has deteriorated so much that it's even worse than before.
Right.
So us educating the people in the out-of-the-way areas of the clinics and letting them understand what it is that they should be doing, even though they're doctors and we're not, is very important. There's another thing, though, with the different regions. So in Africa and places like Syria, in war-torn countries, that's normally wounds or landmines. In places like Haiti, obviously, in 2010, with the earthquake, that was all about crushing. So when someone is trapped and their limb is crushed, infection will set in. And as long as they're trapped by whatever is the concrete or whatever is crushing them, it gets worse and worse. And so the amputation would be due to solving that problem.
Yeah.
The other one in a place like Dominican Republic, Cuba, who haven't really had wars and or haven't had earthquakes or hurricanes to that degree, is motorcycle accidents.
Yeah.
These countries, especially in the Caribbean and South America, they have so many motorcycles. The guys are riding around without helmets, and the traffic is terrible. So in each country or in each zone or region, we find a different need for that.
But at the end, the result is the same. They've lost a limb. They need, they need to have mobility, and that's what you provide them with. So how can people, if they want to help the cause, is it a matter of just donating some money so that you are able to produce more prosthetic limbs, or?
Well, what we did in the beginning was Oscar Christensen, the founder of the OK Prosthetics method. When he approached me, he provided all the support funding for our trips, so our airfares, hotels and transportation on the ground. And what we approached donors for was sponsor one limb, and in effect sponsor one amputee.
Exactly.
So in the early days, we were able to say, well, here's a photograph of the person without and once they were walking, and that's the $750 that made that happen.
Yeah.
But from a sustainability point of view, we also had to rely on the Ministry of Health or some local donor, for instance, British Petroleum, BP in Angola. They funded a program and they funded limbs. So we were able to go under their umbrella, which was ideal.
Yeah.
In Namibia, the Ministry of Health really embraced us, and we ran a number of programs there, training all of their staff in all their clinics. I think we had 30 or more staff members, technicians, not doctors, but technicians who actually do what we do. You don't have to be a doctor, you have to be a trained prosthetist, which is a prosthetics technician. And they have to know about orthopedics. So we trained them in the method, and they thought it was a miracle because they were able to, their dignity went up, obviously, because they were able to fit so many more limbs, and their community suddenly thought they were miracle makers. Whereas before they were regarded as the person who keeps me waiting for my leg, and when I get it, it doesn't fit. So we have lots of young prosthetists who really embrace this. The big thing is to find the funding through their communities and their health departments that can keep funding their use of the product. So the position that we're in now, after 5 or 6 years of actively being on the ground, teaching and training, is that we're hoping for more and more ongoing result from the health departments asking us to come again to give updates to their new recruits, as it were. And the funding goes into teaching and training more and more, because we can't fit all of the millions of limbs that need to be fitted. And we can't also sustainably travel to every country where they have a big problem with our small team. We did that in order to light the fires, but the idea is that then those communities stay in touch, keep requesting materials from us, and we were able to keep packaging and sending the materials for their requirements.
Right.
But it also has to be financially sustainable.
Yeah. So we will provide a link, of course, when this interview goes, well, it is live now, but when we put it up on YouTube and elsewhere across the big wide internet, we will make sure to put a link for people if they want to.
The best thing is to be in touch with me directly.
Yeah. And I've got your email address, so I can add that in as well.
Touch directly, and then we can talk for those who are interested in certain areas. For instance, in our yachting community, we have so many different nationalities, but often a member of the family, someone who marries into a yachting family, might be from, let's say, Angola, and they may have a specific community that they'd like to help.
Right.
And if they have funding available, then we would sit together and we'd customize a program where their village, where they come from, could be addressed, and I would find out what would be available there, what facilities there are, what training there is, and then in partnership with that yacht owner, we could even sail to Luanda, and we could all get in a 4x4 and drive to the village and spend a week there fitting and provide that service.
Yeah.
And then it would be very helpful if that person, that sponsor, not only who provided the funding for that, but would also keep contact with the local people.
Yes.
And be our liaison, because we can't keep flying back to that village.
No, of course not.
We can't afford to fund going back to that village.
And that money could go to something far better, like more limbs.
Exactly.
Yeah, of course.
Or another satellite.
Exactly.
So that's the idea. This is not a commercial project, and therefore it has to be customized with what funds are available and then sustained.
Right.
That's the tricky part. For instance, in Angola, we had BP fund one very large project nationwide, and I was there for 6 weeks, and we drove thousands of miles. BP then said they wanted to do another one. Then there was a change in BP's management infrastructure. We purchased all the equipment for them, and the order never came through. They'd shifted to orphanages or something like that. So we had to try and find another sponsor who was interested in Angola, who would take over that. So bureaucratic administrative control is a nightmare that kept me busy.
Do you know what? I think that's a nightmare straight across the world for so many reasons.
Frustrating. And the founder also would say to me, Anthony, if they're not interested, tell them we've got other places to go. I know we've been there 2 or 3 times, we've helped that community, but if the people there aren't interested in answering our mails or coming up with their follow-up, we can take the horse to the water, but we can't make it drink.
Yeah.
So we'll move elsewhere and find another community that's more willing.
Yeah.
So it's quite a tough thing to keep pushing. The joy at the end is, even if certain areas or zones aren't sustainable, is to remember the communities that we have given a spark of life to, and dignity to, that never had that before and would never have got that before had we not made the effort to jump in the canoe and go there.
Well, and you know what? That is the highlight of it all at the very end, is that you've changed lives, and many lives over many years. And their families have been able to benefit, because you're not just helping the person that is an amputee, but you're also helping the entire community sort of take a step up. And that's absolutely brilliant. Now, for you, what is next? This is the final PINMAR.
Yep.
So are you going to be involved in the future plans? Because I understand there's going to be a great big announcement tomorrow night on what the future holds for the PINMAR weekend.
We don't know what it is.
No.
However, before I comment on that, we also in 2014, Captain Phil Wade, who's a famous yacht captain,
Marine Inspirations.
We founded Marine Inspirations, which is to bring less disadvantaged kids from their communities and bring them into our super yachting world. if they're interested in taking a career at sea, and giving them a taster. So Marine Inspirations since 2014 has brought 66 African kids to Mallorca, introduced them to the industry in general, both racing, yachting, yacht maintenance, all of the different service areas, shipyards, engineering, and those kids are back in Southern Africa studying at the moment and looking hopefully towards, once they reach the end of their tertiary education, to either entering merchant shipping or possibly coming into our industry here. So I'm saying that because whatever PINMAR decides to do and support, we always have candidates.
Right.
They might be amputees who could potentially join our industry. They might be less advantaged kids who've had a taste of our industry, and whatever PINMAR chooses to do, we will continue supporting, because the broad range of charities that PINMAR look after and have over the years are all centered around the same mood and the same theme. So it may have been golf, which would be a bit inappropriate to link to disadvantaged communities in deepest Africa, but the marine aspect of it, and the yachting aspect, and the shipping aspect, and the management aspect of everything that PINMAR has been associated with can be spread in numerous ways. And I also have another initiative which we started recently called Player Inspire. I'm a guitarist and a musician, and Player Inspire is very similar to the Marine Inspirations idea. It's taking youngsters who are at risk of going rotten within their communities, and giving them an instrument to play and bringing them into a community and some kind of focus.
Right.
So if PINMAR were to go the direction of something musical, then there's the Player Inspire aspect of it. Funding communities, instruments, teaching and training and mentoring, which also would uplift communities, obviously.
Yes.
There's the Marine Inspiration side for the nautical aspect, the seagoing aspect, and then there's the prosthetics and prosthetics idea of,
You're incredibly busy helping the world.
it's a wonderful thing to do. I've had a very successful and wonderful career in yachting since 1983.
Right.
And the end of the millennium year was quite enough. I've worn myself out, and it was time to look at other things. PINMAR has provided a great platform for all the great ideas, and all the participants in the PINMAR have been so supportive of all of these ideas that we've had since then.
Well, the nice thing is they've raised over €1 million in 31 years, and you know, all of that money has gone back into the community, whichever, you know, charity and bits and pieces here and there. And what an absolutely phenomenal initiative. It's sort of the end of the season, a celebration of sorts for the yachting community, a chance to network, a chance to get together and renew old friendships, rekindle old friendships, but as well a chance to give back to the communities that are in need of everything and anything. I mean, in today's day and age, you know, the need is growing and growing, it seems, every single day with different political climates. You know, there's just so much happening in the world today. And the fact that these types of things happen in order to give back to the communities in which they, you know, enjoy is absolutely amazing.
Well, and especially you mentioned that our dear friend Entwistle and his team now with
Yachting Gives Back.
Yachting Gives Back just shows us that we don't only support, let's say, long existing and set in their ways ideas and projects. They're constantly new projects that sometimes work and sometimes possibly fade away after a few years, but there's a fresh impetus.
Well, and it all depends on the need. And right now, I mean, Yachting Gives Back is taking that food and they're giving it to, you know, there is an increase in homelessness. There's an increase in poverty right here in the Balearic Islands. And the fact is there is a need. So for this initiative to get any funding and to even move forward, and I mean, the response has been absolutely phenomenal. I mean, if you follow the Facebook page, you'll see the amount of yachts and the amount of people that are bringing carloads of goods and bedding. I mean, the other day, yesterday, Nick was on with me, and somebody had asked, can we take a generator? So, all these things, they can be used. And it's like he was saying, it kind of gives him a kick to think that, somebody who was formerly homeless is sleeping at night in sheets fit for a king. Absolutely brilliant, for sure.
Is.
Well, so you are going to continue to be part of this journey with PINMAR in the future?
Absolutely. We've become a family.
Yeah.
It started off about playing golf and having a good time. And the shift, I think, is important now, because many people are saying, what a shame to move away from this wonderful model. But I think it's a good thing to shift, as long as there's something equally enticing and exciting.
Do you know what? I had to be honest. I had a chat with Nick this morning on the way in. Golf used to be 20 years ago, 30 years ago, even 40 years ago, the place where you did business. It was the corporate place. If you were in sales or if you just even wanted to make connections, you golfed. And watching the photographs of PINMAR over the past 15 years myself, the age of the golfer has gotten older and older, because now it's not golf anymore. You see the 18, 19, they want to go dog walking, or, the yachties anyways, or there's a lot of cycling or hiking. I mean, it's leading into sports that are really moving fast, I think. And it's the same with yachting in general. We're talking 45-year-old yacht owners that are looking, they've only got 2 weeks and they're going to cram everything into that 2 weeks that they possibly can.
Or something like that, rather than
exactly
wander around for 4.5 hours on a golf course.
Exactly. So it's shifted, and I mean, it's a shame to see the end of an era, but the world is changing, and I think we all need to sort of change with it as well. So it's really nice to see that PINMAR is forward thinking in that way. And we all are. It doesn't mean that people can't get together and go golfing, because golf courses are always going to be here.
There'll still be a PINMAR golf happening somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
However many wish to play.
Yeah.
No, we'll absolutely be there and see where we can fit in.
Right.
With the wonderful PINMAR team, all very dear friends, and all the great supporters. Coming here and finding that you have at the gala dinner tomorrow 800 or 900 friends, most of whom you've at least met once or twice, and who know what it is that you do and how you related to this broader industry.
Yeah.
Where on earth in the world do you find that kind of
well, I mean, the yachting industry is tiny.
Real human being family, not Facebook or LinkedIn or something like that. These are people you do meet once a year. Yeah. And you can have follow-up meetings with them.
Well, and I think that's what's important about moving the PINMAR, not from golf, yes, from golf, but continuing the tradition, because, everyone that I've spoken to within, the organization, they talk about the fact that marriages were made, divorces were made, friendships forever. And some of these friendships, the only time they ever see each other is during that PINMAR weekend. And it is strategically planned in between the Monaco Yacht Show and FLIBS. And it has its spot, and nothing else takes that spot. So the fact that they are sort of moving on from the golfing and into something else, I think, is an absolute inspiration. And really glad that you're going to be going forward with them in it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And hopefully I'll be with you again next year with whatever it is.
And then let's see how we fit it into it all, and what we can continue to contribute.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming on board. And I'm going to provide all your information when this goes live. And as well on the YouTube account, LinkedIn, etc., just to make sure that if you're interested in helping out, that you can, and you know who to contact for that purpose.
Very important. Thanks so much for the interview.
No, of course.
To talk to you, and thank you to PINMAR being able to make a public announcement of thanks to Peter Allen, who founded PINMAR, and all the team who've come since then, and have led us down this wonderful journey so far. Well, you know what? Stay tuned for what's to come next. Looking forward. Dun, 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 dun. Thank you very much. Thank you. This has been Ria reporting live for Yachting International Radio.